Good evening, I'm Caroline Winger.
And I'm Rachel Golden.
And this is
the TNR Nightly News.
Tonight we have a new artist speaking out on a new movement known as photorealism.
Tonight we will discuss photorealism, a genre of art that encompasses painting, drawing, and other graphic mediums in which an artist studies a photograph and then attempts to reproduce the image as realistically as possible in another medium.
Our first guest tonight is a photorealist herself, Audrey Flack, the sole female practitioner of photorealism. She's here to talk to us tonight about the movement and her fellow photorealist friends. Welcome, Audrey.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. So Audrey, help the viewers understand what we need to know to understand photorealism.
Well, photorealism comprises of an artist that relies on photographs to create their art. We reproduce the photographs using mostly oil on canvas to create a realistic depiction of the photograph. We try to fool the eye, if you know what I mean.
We've seen your art and it's truly incredible. How do you make your art look so true to the photograph?
Thank you so much. Unlike artists that have come before us, we emphasize the process and deliberate planning of our work. Craftsmanship is prized unlike previous decades of improv.
Many say photorealism complicates realism because it mixes what is real and unreal. Can you elaborate on this?
Well, a lot of people feel that way because photorealism is based on photographs and not direct observation. That reality of the subject matter is more distant. This makes it difficult for critics and for viewers to appreciate our art, which is why it took so long for our art to be recognized as an important art movement. But we acknowledge the modern world mass production and do not deny any reliance on photographs, and we are proud of our work.
Very interesting. Is there a specific subject that you and other photorealists like to paint?
Most photorealists have an interest in themes of machinery and objects of industry, like, trucks and cars. The use of color and light alike are evident due to the reflective surfaces of steel and chrome, which is why they usually pick those subjects.
Who are the photorealists that you're referring to?
Artists such as Robert Bechtel, Richard Estes, Charles Bell, John Bader. They're notorious for that subject matter.
I've noticed that you don't paint the same subjects as these artists. Do you care to comment on this?
Yeah, I actually do get this a lot. Well, I paint what's around me and what I'm interested in. I just happen to be a woman, and a lot of critics are okay with that. I mean, well, not a lot of them are, but a few are. I guess compared to the usual subject of motorcycles and cars, my work is deemed, more feminine and emotional.
Well, you truly are an activist for both photorealism and the women's rights movement. It was great talking to you, Audrey.
Thank you so much.
What a perfect segue to our next segment, TCE, the current events surrounding this movement. Here to talk about this is our nightly current events reporter, Curry Vents.
Thanks so much, Caroline Wenger. Hi, my name's Curry Vents, and I have everything you need to know about why photorealism is happening now in the 1970s. Let's start with the fact that the 1970s is a continuation of a lot of the movements and protests that were started in the 1960s. The 1960s consisted of, the civil rights movement, the second wave of feminism, the anti-war movement towards the Vietnam War, and much of these same sentiments spilt over into now, the 1970s, which is when photorealism is reaching its peak. In the 1970s, a lot of movements were able to continue because Americans are losing faith in their government. Richard Nixon is president, who was involved in the Watergate scandal. Jimmy Carter is president, as well as Americans becoming disinterested in government. Even rock and roll music portrays these ideas because it's another form of a rebellion. Photorealism revealed the post-war American landscape depicting the plight of working-class people in the recession era of this 1970s. Many writers in the 1970s, like Sam Hunter and John Jacobus, saw photorealism against the background of the 1930s Depression-era realism, because photorealism was taking place in the recession era of the 70s. Photorealists captured the things that people strive to have. Photorealism is about going back to simpler times and striving for a happy life. Not only is this idea portrayed through art, but also through the media, like the TV shows like my personal favorite, Happy Days. In the 1970s, the new American landscape consists of highways, billboards, and strip malls. There is also a large car culture, which is reflected in the photorealism art. The major advances in technology allow this art movement to flourish. Here we would like to introduce you to a very special guest who knows way more than I do about photorealism. Welcome Artista Informita, who is an expert on photorealism and is going to tell us all the ideas behind photorealism. Welcome, Artista. Thank you. I'm so very glad to be here. I'm really grateful that photorealism is getting the exposure that it finally deserves.
The first question I have for you is what movements preceded photorealism?
Well, in the 1950s and in the early 1960s in New York City, where photorealism started, the dominant art movements included abstract expressionism, pop art, and minimalism. A matter of fact, pop art influenced photorealism on a larger scale than any other art movements that existed during that time period.
So how do photorealists compare and contrast with pop artists?
Like pop artists, photorealists were interested in breaking down the hierarchies of the subject matter by including everyday scenes of commercial life. However, photorealists feel that their artwork is more significant than those of pop artists because they show the naked truth, so they say.
I know that when photorealism came into the picture, no pun intended, that it was seen as regressive. Could you explain why, Artista, and help us understand?
Many critics of photorealism say that the photorealists are actually one stage away from reality, that they question traditional methods, and that they rely on previous works such as a photograph, which could be considered cheating, but it's really not. And they say that it's not advancing art in any way, but it really is. But these critics were when photorealism first emerged in the 60s, but now it's the 70s, and they're finally appreciating photorealism for what it really is. So
it's very interesting. Another thing I was wondering about this is photorealists claim that their art is not a social commentary. What do you have to say about this?
You know, I've actually heard this one before. Although the artists themselves might believe this, all of their work is recognizably pro-American, which says something about the American capitalists of the culture.
I think after hearing all this information, I might want to become a photorealist. But in all seriousness, what does becoming a photorealist entail?
Okay. Well, now that you've asked me this question, I would like to break it down for you in 5 requirements that kind of explain what it takes to become a photorealist, and this is what they were. So the first thing would be you would have to have a camera, and you have to use a camera and a photograph because you need that photo for background information because you need it for the making of your art. The second requirement would be that you utilize a mechanical or a semi-mechanical means to transfer information because it's not easy. You're trying to make it look exactly like a photograph. You must have the technical ability to make your piece of art look like a photograph. It is very, very important in becoming a successful photorealist artist.
Of course.
And then, like, to kind of backtrack to the beginning photorealists that are really popular that made the foundation, you would have to have exhibited your art as a photorealist by 1972, and we all know it's a little later than that now. And you would have to have had devoted 5 years of your time to the development and the exhibition of art in general.
Well, I guess I'm a little late, that is, to become a great photorealist. But let's all give a warm thank you to Artista for her time and plentiful information about photorealism.
Now, that's all we have for you folks on the expose of photorealism. Tune in next time for hippies and peace signs.
Thank you and good night.